Hello everyone, my name is William. Welcome to Laravel. In this video, we will be adding social login to our Livewire Breeze authentication system. And so let us go ahead and install Breeze and then install the Socialite package. And the Socialite package is a Laravel package that can enable us to be able to easily integrate social logging within our Laravel application. So let us go ahead and install Breeze. We will run the command composer require Laravel Breeze and hit enter in terminal. After installation of Breeze, we will configure it by running the command php artisan breeze install. We will choose livewire -functional and hit enter, and then choose those other values that we are asked. Our Breeze authentication has already been set up. If we are to check our application by refreshing, we can be able to see that we have login and register. I would like us to install Laravel Socialite. We will run the command composer require Laravel Socialite. After installing Socialite, I would like us to create some buttons inside our login form. So we are going to, inside the login form here, I want us to have two icons, one for Github and the other one for Google. So you open resources, views, and then Livewire, and then we open pages auth. Inside here we have our login.play.php. This is the file that I would like us to modify. And so below here, before the end of the form, I would like us to have another div with a class of flex, and we will center our div. Inside this, I want us to have another div, and we will have a class of grid with 2 columns, and inside that I would like us to have anchor tags. And one of them will be going to Socialite, so /Socialite, and then /GitHub, and then the other one will be going to Google. So I'll just copy this and paste down here. We pass in here Google. So for GitHub and Google, we will be passing it dynamically inside our routes file. And of course, you can feel free to add Facebook, GitLab, or any other social links that you would want to authenticate using Socialite. I want us to go ahead and have icons from Bootstrap icons. We will pick some SVG images, get bootstrap.com, and then icons, and scroll downwards and search GitHub. And so we have 2 icons. I pick this one. You just copy the SVG. We're going to paste it for the first one. And the width, I want it to be 40. The height also. We will go back and search the SVG for Google. You just pick this one, copy it, paste it on the second anchor tag, have a similar height, 40, and width. If we are to refresh and see how our icons look, they look something like that. I would like to give a little bit of padding. So in our href, I'm going to have a class. You have padding for the value of x to be 3 and the padding y to be 2. Then I'll use the same class in the anchor tag above to just give a little bit of spacing. Now there is a little bit of spacing. I would like us to go ahead and create routes for our application. So we will go to routes, web.php, and inside here, I would like us to have a controller, which we are going to call social login controller. So let me first of all create that controller. And since we are creating a controller model and migration, we are going to run the command php artisan make PHP artisan make model social login, and then I will pass in -migration and controller. That command will create for us the three things. And I want us to create two routes here. Route get, both of them will be get routes. And the first one will be Socialite. And then because when we have been setting the URLs, we have been saying Socialite GitHub and then Socialite Google. And you can have them differently like that, but it's not an efficient way. We can just use all of them to be taken care of by the same URL. So here I just want us to have a value which you call driver. So the driver is either Google, Facebook, or GitHub, and so on and so forth. And then we will use our controller. And then the method I want us to have for the first one is to provide. And this method will be redirecting our user to the provider, whether GitHub or Google in this case. And then above here, we can import our controller, use app HTTP controllers, social login controller. I also want us to have another route similar to this, which will be the callback route. And so this one, I would like to have it differently. So maybe we can say login, maybe Socialite, or we can say auth, and then driver, then /login. So that is how our route will be looking like. So auth, then we pass in the driver. So if it's Google, auth Google, then login. That will be our callback URL. And the method here will be handle callback. But on top of that, as it is in our URL, somebody can be able to pass any string here. We want to limit the strings that we can be able to respond to only to whatever it is that we may be having in our application. So I want us to attach a constraint here. We are going to say where driver, and we can put several values. So in this case, GitHub or Google. So if you have the other socials, you can be able to pass them here, separated by this slash. And so I would like to also just copy this and paste it here. And in our controller, in our routing, we have everything okay. So let us go to our controller method and be able to have the two methods that you have mentioned there. So we go to app, HTTP, controller, social login controller. Our first method will be public function to provider. And inside here, we are going to pass in the driver. In the second method, we are going to have public function handle callback, and still we will pass in the driver. So in this first method, whereby we are sending to our controller, to our provider, we will just return Socialite driver, and inside here we can pass in our driver value that we have here, and then we can redirect, and that will be everything that we will do. Then it will be authenticated in our driver. I would want us to handle the callback a little bit later, but as we purpose to work on that, here we can be able to use Laravel, Socialite, facade Socialite. I would want us to go ahead and work on the configuration values inside our config services. So we will go to the config directory and then go to services, and we are going to add the variables that relate to the two social links that we are using, or authentication. So the first one, of course, is Google. And so we can have several things here. We can have client ID, and we can set an env value here. So env, we can pass in Google underscore client underscore ID. We will have client secret and change that accordingly. The last thing we need to have, and these one are supposed to be comma separated, not semicolons, because it's an array of values. Then we have redirect, and here we are going to set our redirect URL similarly to whatever it is that we have in our routing file, the redirect URL. I believe that is how I did put it. Whatever it is that we have here, I want us to copy and have similar credentials for GitHub. So let me scroll this one down a little bit and paste. So here we're going to have GitHub. This one will be GitHub also that one GitHub client ID and client secret, and here we will change to GitHub. And I think that is okay. Now we need to go to our .env file, environment file, and here we need to create those values. So the client ID for Google, the client ID for client secret for Google, and then GitHub client ID. GitHub client secret. So let us go ahead and see how and where we can be able to find these credentials. And I want to begin with GitHub. We will go to github.com. I'm already logged into my account. So just click here and we are inside. Where I want to go is on the profile and then settings. And then we will go to developer settings and we will click on auth apps. And here we can be able to create another app. So we can call it Socialite, and we need to have the homepage URL, which is http localhost 8000. The description is optional, and then the callback URL, we can just set exactly what we have in our services here. So what we have here is our URL. So I'll just copy and paste here. But it has to be the same as what you have been able to set in the redirect, in the callback URL in the routing folder. They have to resemble each other. So I will register. And I actually want us to try and see if it's possible for us to actually log in using GitHub. So I will refresh. Now let me click on GitHub, and it is redirecting us. But even though we are having, yes, what we do not have is our client ID and client secret, which I've not picked, and it's what we have here. So this is a client ID. The reason why we are getting that error is because we have not been able to set the values in our .env file. So we will come and put the GitHub client ID, and then I will also paste in the client secret. So we have the GitHub client ID and client secret, and I would like us to just go back and see if now we can be able to log in. The reason why we're having the error is because we had not set the values. Now you can see, you can be able to authorize access. And now we can be able now to process the callback. So everything is okay there. Let us also work on how to get the Google client ID and client secret. And what we are going to do, we are going to visit console.cloud.google.com. And that is going to bring us here. And what I need to look at is APIs and services. For purposes of our project, I'm going to create a new application, a new project. So we can call it Socialite also. Create. We are going to ensure that it is the one that is selected above here, Socialite. And what I want us to do is to click on credentials, or maybe auth consent screen. We are going to create an internal, actually once, if you are working with the applications we will create an external application. We will create. Of course, you'll be asked for the name of the app. We can say my Socialite app. And the email, we can just select the email that we have here. I would like to copy that email. We will use it below. So app logo, app domain, every other thing is optional. We will put in the email address and save. And we will just continue all the way. That is okay. I want us to click on credentials. And I want us to create credentials. And what we need is auth client ID. After that, we are going to select the application type. And in this case, what we are working with is a web application. We can just have the web application like that. And then for the redirect URLs, we can be able to copy what we have again in app services. So we will copy what we have here for Google and paste it here as our redirect URL, and then click create. And so after that, we will have our client ID and client secret, which I'm going to copy and paste in my application, and also the client secret that way. After that, we can go ahead and attempt to check if our Google button will work similarly to what we have in GitHub. So you click on Google, and then it is redirecting us to sign in. And so we can choose the account we want to sign in with. You can continue. And now you see still something is happening and we are reaching back to our application. So now, once we have it like that, everything is perfect. Now I want us to handle a few things. Before I go back to our controller, I would like us to go to the database directory and then go to migrations. And since we have created a new migration, which is social logins, I want us to have several things here. So we have table, and we can have a string, and here we will have provider, and then we can also have the provider will either be Google and all that, and then we can have provider ID, which will be the ID that will be provided by either Google or GitHub for the specific user. And then lastly, we will have a table foreign ID. In this case, we can say user underscore ID. I also want us to have a relationship between the social logins model and the user model. And so inside our social login, I would want us to have a relationship. So above here, we can say use illuminate belongs to relationship. So use database eloquent relations belongs to. And This one is supposed to be in the model, not here. Sorry. Supposed to be in our social login model. I think it's because they are somehow similar. That's why I mistakenly did it there, and we can have it here. And we will have public function user. You can say this belongs to user class. I just want it to be one way in this way, because if we want it to be both ways, we are supposed to go to the user's model and declare the inverse of this relationship. But let us just have it like that, because we will only be querying it one way. So let me go back to our social login controller, and inside our handle callback, I want us to go ahead and handle our callback and see how we are going to deal with logging in a user. So the first thing that we have is in a variable called user, I'm going to save the instance of a Socialite that we have gotten from whichever provider. So you have Socialite driver, and we will pass in our driver. And after that, we can be able to get a user. And this will give us the details of our user. And we can be able to access the avatar, their email, their name, the way they are called in that social platform, whether it's Google, GitHub, Facebook, Twitter, and so on and so forth. And then after that, I want us to check if this user account is actually found in our social login model, or in this case, in our social logins table. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say account or user account will be given by the social login model, where the provider name is the same as the driver. And we can also check another constraint where the provider underscore ID is the same as user get ID, like that. I just want us to fetch one record if it exists. And this may exist or not in our database if the user has never signed in using the social login. You will not find this for the specific provider. So for example, the Twitter or maybe GitHub is what we are having. And so we can go ahead and check if the account exists. If the account exists with these details that you're passing in here, the driver maybe is Facebook and the provider ID is of this specific user, it exists in the database, there's nothing else you're supposed to do other than log in the user. So we can check if user account. So if the user account exists, then we can go ahead and just log in the user. So we can say auth login user underscore account, and then we can leverage our relationship that we have just created. So I can just say user, and that will log in our user. And then it is usually good practice to regenerate session. So session to avoid session hijacking. And then now we can redirect. So return redirect intended. We can take our user now to the dashboard. So that is if this is the case, if the user exists in our system and they have used a specific social provider to log in previously, then we can just go ahead and log them in. But if they do not exist, I want us to check if in our users table there is a user with a specific email that we are getting from the provider. So I'm just using a different variable here. So I'm just saying db user. We can get user, where email is the same as user get email, And when we use user get email, this is how we access the email address that has been provided for us from the social platform that we are using to authenticate. So if we find it, then we can be able to do some more things. So we can say first, if we have a record, we just get one record. If we find the record, then it means we have a user in our database. Maybe they logged in using the register method and they were able to provide their email and all that. But now they have not used the social media that is related to that email to log in. So if that is the case and we have found the user and we have gotten the payload back from our provider, then we can go ahead and log in this user. So we can check again if db user. So if this has a value, or in other words, it's not empty, then we can be able to go ahead and do something and log in the user. So here we are going to do two things. We are going to create their provider ID and user ID inside the social login table, and then we will log them in. So here I'm going to just say social login, the social login model, and then we can say create, and the provider will be equivalent to the driver, that which we are passing in our handle callback. The provider ID, we will get user get ID, like that. And remember, this user we are referring to is what we are getting above here. So that is the one that carries all the payload of the information that we are using all through. And then now we can say user underscore ID, and we can check the ID of this DB user. So what I'm going to say, I'm going to have DB underscore user and then the ID. And after that, we can go ahead and save this new user. In our social login model, we can just say protected fillable or protected guarded, like that. Since we are passing in our values safely, we can have it like that. But you can also have protected fillable and state the values that you want entered in that table. So that is that. So let us continue. Now we have been able to log in a user who has never used the social login to log into our application. We have been able to create their values. And we can say else. So if this user does not exist in the social login table and it does not exist in the users table, then it means they are interacting with the application for the very first time. So for these ones, we can be able to first of all create the user in the users table, and we can go ahead and also create the provider ID and all that in the social login table. So here I'm going to say db user, db underscore user will be given by user create, and we can pass in an array of values. And here in the user model, obviously we usually have the username. So we have name. And in this case, we can get user get name. That will give us the name of the user. And that is the name that they have registered in the social media account. Then email, we can have it as user get email. And if we are also interested in the avatar, we can also get in a similar fashion, user get avatar. But for the password, I'm going to just encrypt a value. So we can say bcrypt, and we can have anything here. So what I'm going to have is just some random values. If they want to reset the password, they can be able to reset. So we can have a value between 1,000 and 999. That one is something arbitrary that I am doing. I do not know if it's necessary to do that, but still we will also need to save our user the details now of the provider and all that. So after doing all this, we can go ahead again and log in our user. So we will do the same thing that we have here above here. So again, we can say auth login, and then we can redirect to the dashboard. So basically, I would want to paste all those things here, similar. Now above here, we need to have several things. We need to have the models, so use app models user. And we also need to have the social login. We also need to have the session, so use illuminate facades, illuminate support facades session, and then we can also use the auth facade because we have mentioned it somewhere there. So basically, I believe we have everything that we need. I also need to run our migration, so PHP artisan migrate. Now, I want us to attempt and see if we can be able to log in a user. So let me go back here and just go to localhost 8000 and go to login, click on GitHub. We are having attempt to read property user on null. I think, where could that be? Auth login user. Yes, there's a bit of an issue because I copied this without regard. We are logging in the DB user below here, not the user account user, because I did copy what we were having above here, this one here, but we accessed these values from a different way, so we can't use it in a similar fashion here. So let me just remove this and pass in DB user. So that is the one that we are going to use. But what you can be able to see is that outrightly everything seems to be working on well. So what I want us to do is to just do the migration, PHP artisan migrate fresh, to just remove any data that we might be having in our migrations, and then go back to localhost 8000. And now when we click login, now we can be able to click GitHub. And now you can see we are logged in our dashboard, so that one works perfectly. We will log out and attempt to log in with Google. So again, login, click on the Google icon, and it will take us here. We will choose which accounts we want to log in with, and it will ask if we want to sign in to the Socialite app. We will continue. So if you are having an application, you put the name of the application there, not to confuse the user. So now you can see even this one we are logged in. And if I'm to log out again, if we go and just register a user fresh, and maybe we can say William, and we have William at example.com, and we have a password. If we click register, even this user is still being logged in, but because we have used the register method, then we need to just log out and try and log in the user. So again, I will click on login and see if we can be able to log in the normal way. So William at example.com, and the password, and click login. So you still see that it logs in the normal way without any problem. So basically that is how you can be able to achieve social login in a Laravel application when you're using Livewire and Breeze. And in this application that we have created, if you want to add even Facebook, you just need the client ID and client secret and set the values in the env and set the values in the config file. Once you do that, then you come to the login form and also add the icon for that social account. And this app that we have created will be able to handle your login without any issue. Thank you very much for following this video tutorial up until this point. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please consider giving us a subscription. And you can like the video if you like it. You can also give a comment in the comment section if there is a question, a query, or a compliment. Thank you very much.